this is really hopeful, right? This is great news. Both Moderna and Pfizer now at about 95% effectiveness.
So more vaccine news today, and this time it was more from Pfizer, releasing new data today showing their vaccine just as effective as the Moderna vaccine. Again, about 95%. So our 9Health expert, Dr. Payal Kohli, is back with us to put it into context and maybe talk about some of the unanswered questions that many medical experts are still wanting to know more about. So Dr. Kohli, let's talk about it. What was the new data suddenly available to Pfizer that resulted in that change of their efficacy claims with their vaccine?
So, Tom, last week when we heard that 90% number, it was based on an interim look. So it was based on 94 infections that had occurred thus far in the trial. Now they're looking at 170 infections. So they're looking at a bigger data set. And what they're looking at is how many infections occurred in the placebo arm versus the vaccine. And the numbers are actually quite impressive. So there were 162 cases that occurred in the placebo group, with 9 of them being severe. Now compare this to what occurred in the vaccine group, which was 8 cases, with only 1 being severe. And that's really how they came up with that 95% efficacy number, because not only was it 95% effective at reducing the incidence of infection, but if you did get the infection, it also appeared to be effective at reducing the severity of the infection. So next, what they did is they looked at subgroups. They looked at different ethnicities, they looked at different ages, and they looked at different demographics to see if there might be some heterogeneity in the response. And that's more good news there, that in individuals over the age of 65, which we consider the most vulnerable group, the efficacy continued to remain above 94%.
Well, heterogeneity is what it's all about. I'll have to go look that up. I don't know what that means. What is heterogeneity, just so I know what that means?
It just means that different bodies respond differently. We've seen this throughout the pandemic, not just with respect to the infection, but with respect to the vaccine. So certain times, certain groups, like certain races, certain ages, certain genders, can respond differently with their immune system, because the immune system is really a function of all of those characteristics. So it's important to have a good representation of many different types of groups, young people, old people, men, women, different races, so that we can make sure that it works well in everybody.
It used to be all about plastics, and then it was all about ball bearings, and now it's heterogeneity. So the big difference that we've been watching between Pfizer and Moderna has been in storage. Moderna's seems like it's a much more casual storage level as far as keeping it cold enough to make sure that it stays as is. Pfizer's had to be at some ridiculous temperature, like 100 below Fahrenheit, but they say they found a workaround?
They have, and I'm glad they're doing this, because otherwise they would get left behind, in my opinion, because this is a big challenge. But essentially what they're doing is manufacturing the doses that are going to be administered in the U.S. in Michigan. Then they're packaging them into small packages, not big ones, but small ones in case they undergo spoilage, using lots and lots of dry ice. And these are special packages that maintain the temperature at, minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit, as you said. They also put in thermal sensors to make sure that they're monitoring the temperature remotely, and they've put in GPS tracking devices into each of these little packages that they're then going to ship using UPS and FedEx around the country. So I think they are working on a workaround, and I'm glad that they are, because that would have posed a very big challenge, in my opinion.
So as far as these vaccines, or this particular vaccine, is anything still giving you pause about Pfizer or both of these vaccines as we go forward?
Yeah, the biggest question, Tom, still remains the safety. Normally vaccine trials take years, so we have lots of long-term data. Now, it's important to know that the FDA set a benchmark of having at least 2 months on median of complete data set of following patients after that second dose of vaccine. And that's mainly because most of the side effects of vaccines occur within the first 2 to 3 months. So that's reassuring that that benchmark is there. But I have to say that in early laboratory studies with the SARS and the MERS vaccines, there was actually a phenomena where the immune system got sensitized by the vaccine and almost had like an allergy response to the virus when it saw it next. Now, this was only in animal studies. It hasn't really happened with the current coronavirus vaccine, but it is a theoretical possibility that sometimes could take a little bit longer to emerge. So I'm starting to feel better about the safety data, but I would necessarily want very close post-marketing surveillance on that as well.
So far, most of the news is good. People certainly still concerned about some of those things. But Dr. Payal Kohli, always great to learn more about it as we go. Thanks for the time today.